So the new operator for Year 8 Season 3 recently got announced, and people seem to have strong opinions on her. People seem to think that Ram is here to make defense completely unplayable and become far and away the best operator in the game. And while I kinda get where people are coming from, we need to all take a step back for a second and think through this logically. Because although on a surface level she seems broken in half, should be nerfed 3 times before releasing level, TikTok doesn't seem to understand that just because an operator has a high ceiling, doesn't mean that ceiling will happen every round. Let me explain. Ram's gadget is overall pretty simple. She throws down a bulletproof drone that moves forward and destroys everything in its path. This includes floors, shields, castle barricades, zombie barriers, barbed wire, rune gates, etc. This is the first part of the Ram is OP argument. Her gadget can destroy basically anything that isn't a reinforced wall. It does too much. But you know who else can destroy all those things? Ashe, Zofia, Sledge, Flores, anyone with nades or a Gon 6. It's just soft destruction, which is something that almost half the attackers in the game have access to. It's easier for most of them too, as Ram needs to expose herself while throwing the drone if she wants to get the most out of it. Technically, you can set it to turn slightly, partially nullifying the risk, but that comes with its own set of issues. Ram's drones only have 1 turn setting, meaning that it's hard to get them to go where you want them to. With some clever placement, it is possible to do some cool things with it, but I really don't think it's going to be as useful as people seem to think. Let's look at an example. The main place people seem to be talking about using the turn functionality is to take out the elbow shield on Organ Basement. And while it's a great idea in theory, and I'm sure you'll get some low elo players with it, the strategy just doesn't work at all against any team that's prepared for it. Most of the time, when experienced teams hold Organ Basement, they'll have someone play a shield in the Shaiko corner so that they'll have a crossfire on the doorway. And what happens when you throw a Ram drone into a crossfire? Someone's just going to shoot the back of the drone and destroy it. Okay, but why don't we just use a Ram drone on the other shield first? Well, it's the same thing, but just in reverse. Well, let's just bring a Capitao and fire off the Shaiko shield while Ram does her thing. At that point, though, why aren't you just using Capitao on both shields? You already bothered bringing him. And even if you still really want to commit to using both Capitao and Ram, the person playing elbow can just push up and shoot the drone. Especially if it's a smoke playing elbow. Then all you've done is waste a firebolt and a Ram drone for 1 toxic babe. Definitely not worth it. But even if you can manage to get everything to work and Ram does destroy the shield, what next? I can't think of a single other place on Organ Basement that Ram is useful. You've essentially brought an operator whose gadget is, in its best case scenario, useful once, and most of the time won't be useful at all. Just play Flores instead. Most of the same downsides apply to him, but at least he's useful after you get the elbow shield down. The thing is, most of the time when you're using Ram to clear utility, you're throwing her gadget into somewhere that you don't already have control over, as if you did have control over the area, the utility would have already been destroyed. But the thing is, if you don't have control over the area, that means that the defenders do, meaning that they can take advantageous positions in order to destroy your drones before they even make it to the utility. This is one of the main problems I have with all the Ram is OP talk. TikTok players seem to be like, OMG, I can't get it with a Mozzie Pest, there's literally nothing I can do, when in reality there's like 15 different things you can do and only 5 of them involve impact grenades. This is actually one of the things I really like about Ram's design. She punishes poor positioning in a way we've never seen before. If you have good positioning, a lot of the time you can just set up a crossfire and destroy your drone, but if you don't, then there goes all your utility. It promotes playing well, which is always a good thing. But to be fair, I haven't even talked about her main use yet. She's very clearly designed as a vertical breacher, able to destroy large amounts of the floor. I will give her that she does seem pretty good at this. If the defense just lets her do her thing, then yeah, she'll seem completely overpowered. But I think this is another case of TikTok just seeing clips of the entire roof getting ripped up and not really thinking about it. Yeah, she can do that. However, 1 set of impacts on site just makes her instantly worse than Sledge. Just destroy 2 of her drones when they're placed, and boom, now Sledge covers way more area and also has nades. For example, when attacking Clubhouse Basement, you usually want to open up the hallway roof and the kitchen floor. For this though, Sledge and Buck just both seem better. Ram's gadget is just very unwieldy on this site. Sledge can open up more while having nades to destroy utility, and Buck can do the same while being able to open up extra angles. To be fair, it's harder for Ram to get C4'd than Sledge or Buck, and she is faster at it, but most of the time you end up waiting on the hatch for your teammates to drone and push either blue or dirt anyway, so the time save doesn't really add much. I'm not saying she's bad at vertical play, and there are sites that I could definitely see playing her, but I definitely don't think she's taking Sledge's job anytime soon. That does bring up the question though of why not both, and to be honest, that does kinda scare me. If people start bringing both a Sledge and a Ram, we might be in for some issues, but nobody runs a Buck and a Sledge combo already, so I'm not too worried about it. There's also the fact that not every site is vertical focused, so RAM isn't doing that on every site. People also seem to be making a big deal over how much noise the drone makes and how it can cover plants. The issue I have with that, though, is that Gridlock can already do that. Also, you're probably setting up your vertical earlier than the round that you're trying to plant, so it shouldn't come up that often anyway. Besides, there is a downside to the noise, as it makes it incredibly easy to flank RAM. On the other hand, another thing we could do to figure out if RAM could potentially be OP is to look back through Siege history. Let's look at some of the more broken operators recently released. Since year 5, the list of operators that I'd consider too strong on release is Melusi, Ace, Azami, Solus, and Fenrir. What do these 5 operators have in common? They were/are good on every single site. Sure, they might be better on some sites than others, but it's not like someone was going to say you're trolling for picking them. That's just not the case for RAM. Even if she is good, she's only really useful on sites that have a lot of vertical. I know people are saying that RAM's secondary gadgets plus the secondary shotgun push are over the top, but Grim also has that, and nobody's saying he's OP. There is one more comparison I want to make here, though. I started playing Siege around the beginning of year 5, so I don't know every time this has happened, but I can only think of one other time the Siege community was this sure that an operator was broken before it was released. The Tachanka rework. I'm sure many of you remember how, when it was unveiled, everyone thought that the reworked Tachanka was going to be completely and utterly broken in half. He just had so much area denial, had an LMG that could make rotates, and could deny plants for 50 seconds. How could you possibly have thought this was balanced? And then he released and was the worst operator in the game. To this day, I would still argue he's the worst defender, although Sens might have taken his worst operator title. There's actually a really good video on this by Reaper. I encourage you to check it out, as there's a lot of similarities between the two arguments. Do I think Ram is going to be the worst operator in the game? No, of course not. She'll at least be okay. But that's my biggest problem with this whole Ram is OP situation. The Siege community clearly hasn't learned anything from the Tachanka rework a couple years ago. It's possible I'm wrong and she is completely OP, but let's at least wait for RAM to get released before we start calling for a nerf. We have no actual evidence whether she's OP or not. Wait until she launches on the live build and then make your opinions yourself. Because believe it or not, TikTok isn't always right. Thanks for watching. Dom, is there anything you want to say to the audience?
Please subscribe to an Epic Wombat. This is coming from his #1 fan. I'm your #1 fan, right?
Yeah.
Yes! Subscribe right now.
Where is he? He's nearby. I'm cornered. Where? Okay, so... Oh my... I don't like this game.